Welcome to the Ultimate Fantasy Locker Room, starring Antone Davis, Rocky DiStefano, Delano Williams, and Phil Anthony. Fantasy football, real results.
What's up, and welcome to the Ultimate Fantasy Locker Room. Today's beer is sponsored by Claremont Brewing Company. My name is Delano Williams, and right here I got the Kolsch 5.2, 28 IBUs, and this right here is a great beer. It's got a nice little light beer taste. A little bit. Let me take a sip real quick. Let me see.
The 5.2. You got to take a lot of sips.
You know what? That right there, that's beer. What you got over there, Phil?
I got the hazy IPA, a little bit of citrusy notes, tangerine, right up my alley.
Yeah, Tone, what you got over there? It's looking mighty dark.
Man, I got the Belgian Strong, 8.8% alcohol, and this thing is actually really smooth. So, not saying it's not strong. Maybe I'll feel it later, but this thing is really smooth going down. Really like it.
Rocky, what do you have?
So I've got the Salt Caramel Stout, and it's measuring in at 5.8. Not quite to 8.8 that Antone's got. But
well, Antone said he's not really feeling anything right now, so,
that's what they all say.
That's interesting.
Interesting.
Gabby, what do you have over there?
Oh, well, you guys can't hear me, but...
Gabby has the Hefeweizen.
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 And what's that IPA? What's that what's that alcohol?
It's only 5.5.
5.5.
So I do have the lowest over here.
Yeah, you do.
Yes.
They're trying to gauge me, keep me calm.
Well, it suits you.
I want to say thank you to CBC.
Hey, thank you CBC for these great beers. And right off the bat, it's been a great week so far.
I made every wrong choice a middle-aged man can make.
All right, so that brings us to our first, and I know I'm going to cut you off there for a moment, but our first segment is going to be woulda, coulda, shoulda, and this is all about the mistakes that we made this week with our fantasy lineups. So I'm not sure who wants to go first. I can tell you that I made a huge one by starting Chase Claypool, who got me 1 point and cost me a game.
Chasing that dragon.
I was chasing a dragon. 3 good weeks, and then
That's what they're saying about him right now. That's what they're saying about him.
Yeah.
Well, Deontay, when Deontay's on the field, he's the best receiver. He's better than Juju.
I think he's better than Juju. I would challenge you that he's more experienced than Claypool. I think Claypool long-term will be a better receiver, but that's yet to be proven.
Yeah, as far as me, the thing I regret, I probably just starting a lineup in general this week was a bad idea for me. I went 1-3 in my 4 leagues daily. I lost a bunch of money. It wasn't good this week. If you didn't have Devontae Adams or Locke, that Sunday night game was incredible.
Yep, I surged back with Locke.
I lost all kinds of money. So, basically every move I made, and even my bench was terrible. I had no pivots, nothing to go to that would have made anything better.
So I'd have to coattail on that same thing. This week, or last week I should say, I really set my team up probably in a week in advance. I was like, oh, this is an easy win. Both my opponent was 500, I'm 500. I'm like, we got to break. This is it for me. And then Odell Beckham Jr. happened, and I had no one to pivot to. I had Slayton. Slayton's not really given that much right now, and that I would say I don't want to put it on him because it's unfortunate for him, but it hurt me. It cost me.
And that was early. Was that the second series of the game?
First play of the game.
Yeah, I couldn't even swap. It's like, that's it.
Oh, that was a pick, right, by Mayfield, first play?
Yes, it was.
Just checking.
Yes, it was. And then he went 21 out of 21.
And they're playing Bengals?
All right.
Okay.
Antone, how about you? Was there any? Because your team is called the Invincibles, but that hasn't been the case so far.
That's a 0-7, right?
Thanks a lot. I appreciate you keeping track of my record. I think the biggest woulda, coulda, shoulda that I did was even playing this year, because right now I'm actually hating. I literally put that in the group text. I hate fantasy football. I don't really hate fantasy football. I think I just hate my skill set right now. So I got a lot of work to do.
You're definitely learning the difference between football and fantasy football, and there's a lot of great players in real life that in fantasy don't produce.
Right.
How about for you guys? Was there any player that you started that you were pretty excited that you did start? Thought that you had that worked
Well,
out?
I mean, this right here is a no-brainer. Even though it was a great game and they took their first loss, you can never go wrong with Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
He's always going to come through. Got me almost 30 points, and I'm always glad I started him. And I have at least, on my bench, I have at least 3 other quarterbacks. So,
That's a good point. I've not been a huge Russell Wilson fan, but all the guy does is win. All he does is produce. I mean, you can't. At some point, you got to just get on the bandwagon and say, "Okay, this guy's a player."
He is.
Right.
Well, and
He's
the
an
thing
MVP,
is,
man.
He's I don't know what measuring tape they're using. The guy's not 5'11", 5'8". He's not, but he's amazing. I mean, he's truly an amazing quarterback.
consistent. So consistent.
How about you, Phil, and your 1-3 record this week? Anybody you started that you were proud to?
Not really. I started Cam and was expecting
Oh,
big
my
things,
gosh.
but I mean, -2.
Yeah.
This guy's throwing balls into the ground. I mean, I'm watching the highlights on my phone, and I'm losing it. Yeah, I mean, there was nobody I started this week that made any sense.
Good pickup. Part of a fantasy football, good fantasy football, is being active and taking chances and picking up players on the waiver wire.
Yes.
So out of my 4 teams, I've made 137 moves already this season. So you got to stay active and pick up players.
Same. I'm doing the same thing. Right now, I'm running out of running back, so I feel you. Ooh.
Boy,
It's not good.
Goodness.
you know what that means?
I think I heard OBJ there.
Was that him?
Yeah, OBJ happened.
Ouch. I love you, OBJ.
We cannot go another step without talking about the major injuries that happened this week, and obviously OBJ being one. Torn ACL, out for the season. Definitely going to stir up some rosters and cause guys to go back to the drawing board and rethink what they're doing this year. So, what do you guys think, man?
I think, what was sad for that play in particular is OBJ hasn't always been great in Cleveland. I don't think it's his fault. I think it's just been the dynamic.
Right.
But this year, he has been a really consistent producer. And he got injured on a team play. He came back to try to break up a interception and got hurt on that tackle. And I just hate it for him because he did it being the ultimate team player.
Right.
Well, what I would say about OBJ, honestly, I don't think they're a better team without him. I don't think Mayfield's better. I know you said that off the mic, Rock, but with him, I think just guys that have him on their team, it just gives you a little bit of freedom because he's the kind of guy that's you feel like you have to play if you have him on your roster, but he's giving you 4 receptions, 70 yards. You're just not, it's there, but you're not getting the upside from him, and it kind of frees you up to play those guys you got stashed on your bench that you feel like can maybe give you a little more. You've seen score a little more on the bench, but it's just hard week in and week out to start one of those guys over OBJ. So.
After I heard talking about it with Rocky, it's just, I think he's right about, what you just said. You don't have the pressure of him on the field. And you saying on the team, on the field, to have to be like, oh, I got to throw to him because he is my wide receiver. He is my go-to. And, unfortunately, without him, look what Mayfield did.
Mayfield's completion percent and touchdown to interceptions both dramatically increase when OBJ is not on the field. And it's not because OBJ is not good. It's because Mayfield feels the pressure to throw to him, and he throws inopportune times, which leads to interceptions and leads to breakdown. And the Browns are not that. They're not good enough to spot the other team. So I think they're better with OBJ. I think Mayfield feels less pressure with OBJ, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so it makes sense to me.
What about any other injuries you guys?
One
hit hard.
Yeah, one other notable injury is going to be Kenyon Drake. Kenyon was actually playing well, putting up a lot of points, and now it looks like he's going to be out for about 4 to 6 weeks, if not a little bit longer.
Yeah, I didn't see that play how he got injured, but I know once he did, Chase Edmonds came on really strong.
Yeah. He got me. No, he did. He didn't win me the game because I lost that game, but he gave me more points than I thought I needed. I dropped Ingram just to pick him up, and he did come out for me last week. Not the last week, the week before last. But.
The thing about Drake is I don't think he's a good football player in general. So I'm not happy he was injured, but it kind of gives us a chance to get Edmonds in there. I know a lot of guys have been following for the last couple of years, have just kind of been waiting for him to get his chance.
Yep.
And man, yeah, he was on my bench, put 20 up after the injury, and so I'm excited about starting him next week, getting a chance to put him in the flex and see what he could do with like more of a workload. I think he's more talented than Drake. I think he's definitely going to see a bump in his value and overall what he's worth, especially in Dynasty going forward with Drake out. Because I think once he takes that, I think Drake doesn't get the job back.
It's been a really crazy year for injuries just in general because we had Christian McCaffrey got injured.
Yep.
In fact, if you look at it, I think 2 or 3 of the top 7 running backs from the start of the season are now injured. And I think it affects teams. You have to pivot. Thankfully, Delvin Cook had Alexander Madison behind him. Drake had Chase Edmonds, and Christian McCaffrey had Mike Davis. So if you were able to pick up or if you stashed those running backs as handcuffs, you weren't hurt. But if you drafted Christian McCaffrey number 1 and you haven't had him for 5 weeks, it could mean your season.
Yeah, it's tough.
It's really looking like most of these running backs, they're week by week at this point. Last week I do believe Carson was hurt. He came back in. You look like that Delvin Cook. He's questionable right now. Right. Hopefully he'll be able to play.
He's going to play this week.
No, right, for sure. But you're having these, and I want to say running backs more so. They're being
in any other position.
They are really getting. So now you're having to look back at they're not up there, but your Todd Gurley's like. Those are who you're having to go for your hopefully not Le'Veon Bell, but those type guys because these guys are.
Yeah, but even Bell, I think.
I like Bell this week a lot.
Yeah, I do too. And I look at you talk about like a Chase Edmonds being an upgrade. Mm-hmm. I agree, he's an upgrade, and I'm not so sure that Le'Veon Bell won't be an upgrade to Edwards.
Well, I think he is, and I was going to get into this later, but just since we're on it, I mean, Le'Veon Bell, you got a game where they're favored by 19.5 points. And, you're talking about second half, that's prime time to just run the ball, grind some clock. Right. Mm-hmm. But on top of that, last week, I think Edwards-Helaire had, I believe, 8 carries, and Le'Veon had 6. So he only outpaced him by 2 carries. And you got him going against his former team. And, it seems a little cliche, but those coaches, the guys on the team, they know it's going to mean something for him to go against that team, especially the way it ended over there.
More drive.
Well, you always want to do
sure.
against your team.
For sure.
So a couple other guys that I want to talk about just real quick. Debo Samuels for the 49ers is going to be out.
Mm-hmm. Big hit.
So, definitely a big hit. But one more that I want to talk about, which may lead us to something else, is Chris Godwin. Chris Godwin for the Bucs broke a pinky finger. Fractured pinky, going to have surgery. He's going to be out. But, fellas, they just added Antonio Brown.
They did.
What do we think
really
about
did.
that? Yeah. What do we think about that?
This week or just season long?
This week, of course, but season long even.
So he joined them. I don't know. Do you think they just paired him? I feel like maybe not, he's not with the Patriots anymore. And I mean, Tom Brady, I don't know if they put in a word for him, but it's kind of like, he was just with the Patriots just a moment ago. And then Tom Brady moves down, half the team or Gronk. And now AB is getting picked up over there. And I think they need it. Him and what's his name? Is it Williams?
Mike
Evans. Oh man, I think that is going to be. It could take a lot of.
What do you think, Antone?
Well, Chris Godwin was playing well, but Antonio Brown, no way he comes on that team without being vouched for by Tom Brady. So Tom has already said that he literally vouched for me, fought for him, and everybody knows. I think the whole country knows now what we're getting into when you talk about bringing Antonio Brown onto your team. And quite frankly, it's kind of like a TBD, right? We know what we have, we know what kind of player he is, but we just don't know what he's going to do from one day to the next.
But you know what? I think we forget what kind of player he was because. First of all, Tom Brady has always wanted Antonio Brown on his team, always. He's a huge fan of Antonio Brown. And one thing that Brady knows is talent. Secondly, if you look back at the last game-changing receiver, not named Devontae Adams or Michael Thomas, it's Antonio Brown.
It is.
The guy scored a touchdown every week in Pittsburgh just about. And he's a guy it's hard not to root for because he's another undersized receiver from a small school that everybody said wasn't going to be good enough.
Yep.
True.
Well, on that, the thing about, I mean, through the grapevine, kind of the rumors are that part of Brady's signing in Tampa was that they would give Antonio Brown a look. And like you said, you know, he got him in there last year with New England.
Yeah.
He offered for him to live at his house. I mean,
Yes.
they're friends.
Yeah.
Off the field. So season long, he's going to be involved. And I think as good as Godwin is, he's better than Godwin. He's probably better than Evans.
For
This
sure.
week, though, I mean, it bodes well for Evans because I don't think Brown is going to be a big part of what they do. Maybe he is, but he's only maybe a week and a half into that playbook, and maybe he knows the terminology. Maybe he doesn't. I don't know. But the problem with Evans is just, you know, even with the volume, he hasn't been very efficient.
He's been touchdown dependent.
And just to add, before you cut it, the guy he's playing against is going to mirror him. Bradbury was on Carolina for 2 years, played against him, and basically shut him down every time he played him. So,
But look, adding an element like Antonio Brown to a team like this,
For sure.
it takes defenses back to the drawing board because it's like you just said, we don't know. We kind of forget what kind of player he was. I guarantee you right now, every team in the league is grabbing all the old film they can find from Pittsburgh going, oh, what did this guy do last? And same thing for the Patriots. What did he do last? Because now I think Evans is like the happiest guy in the locker room because now the attention may
for
not be
sure.
on him. Now he can get open. Now he's not double teamed. So you got him. You got Gronk coming into his own. Guys,
that's true.
For sure.
Well, and I mean, Godwin is a good receiver. He's a really good
is.
receiver. Is he a true number one?
No,
to
he's
me,
just slot.
that's right.
Yeah.
He speaks like somebody who will get paid like a number one and might fail on another team. He's benefited from having Evans across the way from him.
So
But
who,
big
hands down,
picture,
who's their number one? Who's Tampa's number one?
It's gonna be
Would you say
Evans.
Evans, right?
Evans, it's Evans now, but
He
I'm
doesn't
going to say
it will be
I
Antonio.
believe Antonio
it'll
Brown.
be Antonio.
And with
Brown.
that being said, I will say if we're saying Tom and them are friends like that, Tom will curve any of that backlash that we remember of.
Antonio Brown is quicker than Evans too.
Yeah.
Antonio
true.
Brown will be the number one receiver.
But to bring this back to fantasy, they all hurt each other.
Yeah,
Brown
yes.
hurts Evans, Evan hurts Brown. I mean, football wise, they help.
Yeah.
But on the field, Gronk, so many mounts to feed is going to hurt them.
Unless-
The guy it helps though is Brady. If you have Brady, it's
Right.
going to boost him up a little bit. More options, more guys to throw it to.
And he's looked pretty good already this year. In fact, you know, I was a big outspoken, I did not believe the greatest of all time talk about Tom Brady. I watched him in college against Ohio State. We loved playing against Brady because he wasn't a great quarterback. But I got to say it. He's the real deal.
he's a GOAT, man.
If you can do it in Tampa,
You can do it anywhere.
you can do it anywhere.
And that's it, guys, for this week's injury report.
Feel good about our backups. Feel good about our tight end. I feel good about our quarterback. I feel good about our two running backs.
And we have, and you guys know what this is. This is what we're going to do. Start and sit to make sure we get you guys the best players in the best position.
Yeah, I think Delano.
Take that with a grain of salt.
We got to take that with a grain of salt.
I think Delano, you're going to start with running backs. Is that true?
I am going to start with running backs, and this is who I would start. Number one, we all know Alvin Kamara. That guy is lights out. He is increasing his workload this week, and he's so consistent. Right now, he's pretty much averaging, I would say, he's unstoppable touching the ball the past 7 weeks. Increased workload, given no less than 20 points a game.
Yeah.
On average, he's about 25 points. And going against the Bears this week, I don't see anything stopping this guy right
No,
now.
and I mentioned off air, it's amazing to me with Alvin Kamara because he's the top running back in the league right now.
Oh, for sure.
However, he's only on pace to run about 973 yards as a running back.
Right.
His value is he's going to catch 125 receptions, 1,300 yards, and he adds touchdowns. So those two combined, you just can't beat the guy right now.
Not right now. And this the next one, because you said that, the next one's interchangeable. Alvin's obviously number one. The old number one is, which I'm having a hard time whether we want to place him, is Ezekiel Elliott. Ezekiel Elliott, he's probably been the most consistent player so far, running back in the league right now. But seeing the game against the Giants, obviously that's when Dak got hurt. You can see he only made 12 points that game. If you look back the week after after that week, he only got 6 points. And both of those games, NFC divisions, they're tough. They're rival teams. So he's been putting up no less than, I want to say, 25 points. That's how good he is. But right now, I'm not too sure if you want to put him in with exchangeable with who I would go through 2 and 3 is Derrick Henry.
I think Zeke, he's one of my favorite running backs, Ohio State grad. I gotta believe he knows they're playing for next year now.
Okay.
I think he knows it. I think the coaches know it. I think they're going to have to start mixing in Tony Pollard some, not because Zeke deserves to be benched, but because they need to protect their asset for next year.
Well, he looks disinterested, honestly.
He does.
To be honest with
He
you.
does.
I mean,
So with that saying, are we dropping his stock right now? Is
I
his
am.
stock?
Yeah,
I mean,
he's-
it's huge. From the weeks
Yeah.
that he's had to these last 2 weeks, are we dropping his stocks
I'm
officially?
dropping his stock.
I dropped him to.
I mean, he's
for
pretty
me-
low
Yeah, for me, he was.
relative to his positioning.
That's
Correct.
exactly it.
That's true.
In fact, I think he dropped out of the top 10 for me.
He did.
this week.
So we're gonna go Alvin. Then we're gonna go after that Derrick Henry for sure. We want to start them over them of Ezekiel. I know the numbers look good. You know what I mean. And there's no telling. I do believe they play Washington this week.
Oh, they played Washington last week. You're mixing it.
I'm mixing it up.
So who do they play this
I think
week?
it's the beer.
It could be the beer.
The
Hey, shout out to
5.6.
the 5,
CBC.
the 2.5. Shout out to Claremont Brewing Company.
1.5.
They got me.
That's that old duels.
The old duels.
Yeah.
So I got a few guys at running back that I was thinking
right.
about, and I actually do have who did you say? I don't have Elliott. I have Kamara.
Okay, for sure.
I like Kamara a lot, and we talked about Bell a little bit.
Yeah.
And I do just think the revenge game angle, all that, and just the fact that they're going to be up. Kareem Hunt, I like a lot.
Guy's a man. Just a
He's-
straight up man.
The volume, the pass catching, and the defense he's going against. I mean, I think they're bottom 3 in the league against the running back on the ground, and bottom 3 in the league against running backs catching the ball.
Right.
So I mean, it's like a dream matchup. They're at home. They're favorites. Kareem Hunt's a great play. Gio Bernard for Cincinnati is a great play.
Joe Mixon's going to be out. Looks like it's going to be multiple weeks.
And Bernard's, he's not going to hit a home run for you, but he's going to catch a lot of balls. He's going to get most of the work. And then the other guy I got here is Jamal Williams. And this is depending if Aaron Jones plays or not. We know if Aaron Jones plays, you're going to play Aaron Jones, and he's going to affect Adams a little bit too with the pass catching. But Williams, I mean, he's solid, and he's a guy that you could pivot to if you don't have anybody. If you need to fill in for a bye week, you can snatch him up. If sharp leagues, he's going to be gone already. But there's a lot of leagues you could find him on the waiver wire and still plug him in.
I've got, one back that I really enjoy a lot that I think is going to be great and have a really good second half of the season is Jonathan Taylor. He's big. He's fast. He's averaging over 4 yards a carry. The issue hasn't been in his productivity. It's been in they haven't fed him the ball. But if you look at, in particular, this week, the matchup's really strong. But I think if you look at his schedule the rest of the way out, he is somebody that I would be starting. Honestly, I'm ready to start him above even Josh Jacobs because Josh Jacobs has just been so inconsistent.
Yeah, I'm not loving Josh Jacobs right now.
All right.
So who do you have?
Well, man, I'm going to switch gears on you guys and go to quarterback.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let's do it.
So I'm going to give you guys my top 5, right? Guys that I'm going to start this week. I'm going to start Tom Brady, right? This guy's putting together a dynasty, a little mini dynasty down there.
I'm kind of
right?
sensing a little bit of a. He's got
see
a little
it.
bit of a
You're
man.
seeing it,
crush.
right? You're
a little
seeing
bit of a
it.
man
Just a little.
crush on
You know
Tom.
what? I'm just accepting the reality that the guy is a GOAT, right? You can knock him, you can not like the team, you can not like the colors, but the guy is a player.
Okay, when you played, who did you protect at quarterback?
I protected Randall Cunningham.
Randall Cunningham.
Yeah.
One of the greatest of all time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
20 years ahead of his time.
Yeah.
Fantastic player. Another guy that I'm going to start this week is going to be Matt Stafford.
Oh yes,
Matt
for
Stafford
sure.
is hot, man. When these guys get hot, man, I'll tell you what, man, watch out because these guys know what they're doing. They're on a roll. Very few things will affect them if they have their players, if they have their guys to throw to. These guys are very, very good football players. Also going to start Drew Brees.
You have to.
Consummate
especially
professional.
with Michael Thomas coming back
yes.
this week.
Yeah. Now listen to this one. I'm going to sit Tua Tagovailoa.
Ooh, I like that.
I'm with you.
I'm not buying it, man. I'm not drinking the Alabama.
You're not on that
Kool-Aid,
yet,
man.
right?
Nobody gets 8 seconds to throw the football in this league, man.
No.
You got about 2.1, and you better let it rip. And Tua has been sitting back there behind that big Alabama offensive line. He's been having 6, 7, 8 seconds to throw the football. That's like worse than 7-on-7. I'm sorry, but I think Tua's going to set a record for picks.
So who they got this week? They got the Rams.
Let's see.
No, Miami's not playing the Rams.
Yeah, actually they do.
Oh, you're
They
right.
got the Rams this week.
Yeah.
So-
So that was one of his big things in college. He holds on to the ball.
So he's going to hold on to the ball, and Aaron Donald's going to be ankle biting him all
You're
night
done.
long.
Yep.
I'm not starting Tua, man. I like Tua as a person. Think he's a great person. Going to be a fine player, but not yet.
Yeah.
Well, that pivots right to a defense you want to play right there is the Rams.
That's right.
No question about it.
That's right. And anybody playing the Browns?
I mean, QBs.
No,
I'm looking at.
I'm sorry, Rocky.
The Burrow and Tannehill. That game, I think both of those guys, as I said off mic, are gonna put up numbers this week. And real quick, I also like Cam to bounce back against Buffalo. Buffalo's defense is, against the rush is ranked 26th, I believe. And Cam's averaging 10 rushes a game. He's going to run the ball this week, especially after what happened last week. I think they're going to want to
Cam is
get
running
him
the
more
ball.
involved. Yeah, Cam.
I just want to get this. I want to make
Well,
sure
he's
I'm hearing
averaging
this.
10 carries. He's averaging 10 carries a game this year. So
I think the hoodie was actually doing his own start sit right now.
Yeah.
I mean, let's just be real.
Yeah. I tell you who I like is, and I'm surprised by this because the tone when he was drafted was that he played in a simplified offense in college, and that he was green and needed a lot of developing. But Justin Herbert has absolutely killed it.
Yeah.
And
So far.
well, I mean,
he's
he's
the real-
averaging over 300 yards
real
a game and 3 to 4 touchdowns the last 4 games. And against some pretty decent defenses. I mean, they were in the game with Kansas City.
Right.
Jacksonville has a pretty decent defense. I'm impressed with him.
I agree with that.
He's my dark horse, man. I still say out of the top 3 quarterbacks drafted, he's the best one by far.
Yeah. And he could
and then
be.
I mean, not to cut you off, but with Herbert, I think he was kind of held back in college
Could
as
be.
far as the scheme they were running. He didn't really get to open it up as much. That system they run over there is kind of more fast-paced, slant, stuff like that. I love Herbert. Another guy I love is Derek Carr. I mean, he's been great this year, and he's going against a terrible defense.
Yeah.
No offense, Rocky. But they're really bad. And then that rolls right into where I want to go, tight ends. I love Darren Waller. This week, he's my top play. If you got him.
Just picking on the Browns, man.
I mean, they're terrible. They have bad linebackers. They're terrible against tight ends.
They have a great defensive line.
Yeah, no, they're great against the run. I mean, that's about it. And the thing with Waller is just, he's getting like 27% target share on that team, and they're saying there may be the weather may be rainy, a little windy in Cleveland this Sunday, but he's averaging, I think, 4.5 yards per target. So that kind of he's getting his catches, he's making his money, close range, and he just has so much of a target share. You can't go wrong with Waller. And as far as the other 3 top guys, you got Kelsey, you got Andrews,
Kittle.
and Kittle. So I love Kittle. They're playing the Seahawks, and we all know the Seahawks this year.
We balling.
You don't know what's gonna. They're gonna score.
Yeah.
Their
they allow
defense
teams to
is
score.
It's a shootout,
terrible.
for
It's
sure.
gonna be a shootout. Kelsey, I don't like Kelsey. I mean, you could play him. You might get lucky. He catches the touchdown early in the game, but like I said, I think they're gonna go up early. Even if they sleepwalk a little bit by halftime, I think going to be up by enough where they're not going to be throwing the ball all around the yard. I don't like Kelsey, especially for, if you got somebody on the bench that you could pivot to that may be in a better game script as far as what's going to happen in the game. And Andrews is another guy. Andrews, I have him on 2 of my teams. I like Andrews, but he's touchdown dependent. I believe
most tight ends are. That's the issue with tight ends.
not those 3 other guys are not though.
No,
so
you're right.
he's
They
one
get
of the
the targets.
He's one of the top 4, but with him it's special because I think there's 3 games this year that he didn't score a touchdown, and he's averaging 4.3 fantasy points in those games.
That's true.
So I mean, he's touchdown or bust. If you don't get a touchdown out of Andrews,
He's done.
he's not doing much for you.
All right, so I've got as far as, because I know we're running out of time in this segment,
Yeah.
but I wanted to mention one wide receiver in particularly deep leagues. If you're looking for a receiver to pick up that I think is going to have a great second part of the season, and it's a name that some know and some don't know, is Rashard Higgins. Rashard Higgins has, in the last 3 weeks, with OBJ on the field, scored.
You can't waste good beer.
Stop.
Man.
It's stop.
It's all good. It's all good.
That 6 point. That what is
So
it?
what do we do
6.9.
with this? Can we edit this out, or is this?
No, we leave that in.
We'll leave it in. It's fine.
All right.
It's our first
That was a
episode,
Zeke.
everyone.
So
And they were talking about mine.
let me tell you about Rashard. Rashard has scored 8, 12, and 16 points. And the thing is, him and Mayfield, they have a chemistry. I don't know why, because Rashard isn't the fastest, he isn't the biggest, but he is a great route runner, and he's a great touchdown receiver. Last week, he had 110 yards off of 11 receptions. So if you're looking for a receiver to pick up in a deep league, Rashard Higgins.
Not to mention that touchdown.
Yeah.
That he had. It was a great.
Well,
touchdown.
he didn't have the touchdown, but he had the setup for the touchdown.
Was it the one before the?
Yep.
That was a great touchdown. What do you think about Thielen? There it is. That's what we
Are
think
we
about.
crying over
Better,
beer?
I lost like half
Oh
of it.
man.
I lost like half of it.
My carpet
We'll
got
go
it.
back to it. It smells great. Hoppy.
Thanks.
Very happy.
Yeah.
My wife will be proud.
Just don't tell her.
What are the odds? What are the odds you drop that beer on the ground?
Beer
I think
dropping.
this is the reality is he poured a little out for Odell Beckham Jr.
Hey, those small hands.
So-
He's
Small
dropping
hands.
things
Small
out.
hands.
Burger
Wow.
King, you remember?
You poured out a
So
little
you're
bit for your
telling
mom.
me there's a chance.
Right. It's our favorite.
Cha-ching.
All right, so here, my favorite
Cha-ching.
segment. You know, this is where we make the money.
Did you make money last week, Phil?
I broke even. I didn't do terrible, but you know, the best bettors in the world, they're hitting about 55%. You know, so it's a 50-50 proposition. Drunk baby at a bar flip a coin and hit it 50% of the time. So
He's talking about what he just did right now.
It's just 5% that makes you a pro. But you know, just to get into a little bit, we're gonna, especially this episode with the daily fantasy, we're gonna
Treat
Okay.
people like beginners a little bit, right?
you know, and we'll just do that for this episode, just kind of so we can refer back to it for anybody that joins listening on later on. Just talk about some strategy, especially with you guys here. I know none of you guys really play daily fantasy, so it'll be a good opportunity to kind of just talk about it. Any questions you guys have, it'd be easy for me to answer, kind of educate the audience. Get into a little bit of strategy as far as the different type of games you could play. And then we'll talk about a little bit of betting, some lines at the end. I'll give you a couple picks. So before I go into a diatribe about anything, anybody have questions or just is there anything
Yeah.
you don't know about daily fantasy?
So my question's always been, talk about what lineup are you trying to start, and is there a set amount of money you can spend?
Yeah, so the two main games you could get into, DraftKings and FanDuel, they both have a different salary cap. I believe FanDuel's at $66,000 and DraftKings at $50,000. And they price their players differently, obviously. So, you know, you're just building a lineup to fit that, but the money is kind of secondary. What you're really looking at is it depends on the tournament or the game you're playing. So, you know, you could play anything from a 1-to-1 head-to-head. I could invite you. We could play against each other. I could play against a group of 100 guys, 200, 3,000, or I could play a tournament where I'm playing against 300,000 guys. So there's a different strategy when you're trying to, you know, like I said to you the other day, land in the top 2% of the pool or land in the top 0.02% of the pool. When you're playing against a smaller amount of guys, it's more akin to yearly fantasy, what we play. When you're playing maybe more consistent guys, safer guys, and trying to get your points, if you get what I'm saying. The tournament structures, you got to gear your lineups more for guys that could blow up. You know,
Right. Yeah, you're looking for upside.
looking for upside, and there's a lot of game stacking, like the Cincinnati game with Tennessee. You know, for tournament plays, you kind of want to find a game that Vegas is saying is going to be a high point total, and find the best options in that game where you might put Burrow and stack him with T. Higgins
Right.
and Boyd and then find a couple other guys from other games like a Kareem Hunt that are kind of one-offs. And, you have your stack of guys that you think this game's going to go up, because to really win in those games with so many people, you need to find a game like that Seattle game last week where you're going to get Russell with Lockett and you're going to have them go nuts. So and then maybe you had Adams in there, and then you're plugging in Gio Bernard last week where he saves you some money because he's priced lower. And that's how you got to build your lineup with value and correlation.
So you've got like 66,000 to spend total.
Yes.
And if you spend a great deal on Russell Wilson and Tyler Lockett, you're looking for a cheaper running back, which might have upside.
Yeah, right? You're trying to, and then the thing with that also is you also want to pivot off those guys like Gio Bernard last week was an easy play. Like guys that are doing this every day, they know Gio's going to get all the work. So he's going to be heavily used. So you're looking for value in other guys that maybe last week you would have played somebody that was maybe only
Jamal
had
Williams
5%. Jamal Williams, but he was another guy.
People
are on that. So those are cases where you pivot off and you find a guy that maybe costs a few more dollars, but it gives you a little bit of variance between the two. And it allows you to score different points, because it's not so much about the points you get. If they're both going to get around 15, you want a guy that's going to give you different points. So maybe 15.8 versus 15.6, because that variation is what's going to set you apart from such a large field. And the regular cash games are kind of just like your regular fantasy. So, go to the sites. I encourage you to read the rules. There's different scoring on both sites. DraftKings is PPR. FanDuel is half a point per reception. You want to look at the scoring, the rules, and like I said, there's hundreds of different games you could get into. So really, before you enter, read. You could do it as recreation, but you don't have to be stupid with the money.
Well, and can't you practice for free for a little bit?
Yeah, you could practice for free on both sites. There's a bunch of free tournaments and regular games you could get into just to practice. And even when you start putting money, they'll keep you in the pool with intermediate players for a while until you have X amount of games played, and then they move you up.
Right. Very interesting.
Cha-ching.
Awesome. So who do you think, if somebody's looking for a cheap running back this week that might be, somebody people aren't going to think about, do you have one or two that you could mention?
They're all on my team.
Oh, wow.
I'm just being real.
Okay.
He's not lying, though,
Well, the
guys.
problem this week, it's a bad slate this week. You got, I think, about 10 teams on bye. So they're very, very small pool. So as far as value plays, guys that you're going to get cheap, as I mentioned, Gio's going to be a guy again this week, Jamal Williams. But in a spot like this, when you know guys there's only a handful of guys that are you get a good value out of, a lot of people are going to be on them. This is when you want to kind of pivot to a guy like Derrick Henry maybe this week.
Yeah, spend the money
there and take the value somewhere else.
Find it in receiver, find it in tight end.
Jonathan Taylor's another good pivot this week because the floor he offers. So,
James Conner.
I don't like James Conner this week.
Sorry.
But
So,
don't play him this week, guys.
Most of James Conner's greatest games have been against the Browns. Just if you take out the games against the Browns.
What are you saying about the Browns right now?
I think we all know.
they have a bad.
Hurt.
They have a good run defense this year, but last week
That's because everybody can pass against them. So.
But yeah, as far as the daily, like I said, as the episodes go on, we'll get more in depth and kind of speak about it more in a way where I'm expecting you to know what you're doing. Go check it out. Look at the rules, practice a little bit. And just as an example, that Cincinnati game for different strategies, you got 3 wide receivers. And because Burrow's dropping back over 40 times a game, you got 3 different wide receivers that actually have 3 different strategies to them and 3 different type of tournaments you want to play them in or strategies you want to use. You have AJ Green, which is he's going to be a good value play because he's way priced down right now because of his status. But he's getting more targets the last 3 games than any of the receivers. But he's also 0 for 8 in red zone targets. So, he's not scoring. So, but you get a value there with the volume. And you got Tyler Boyd, who's your guy you want to play in those head-to-heads, the basically cash games where you're playing like 1 to 3,000 players, where he's going to give you he's dependable, consistent, and then T. Higgins is your guy for tournaments. So just think about it like that. You got those 3 guys on one team in the same offense. They do 3 different things, and that's kind of the strategy. So T. Higgins is the guy that could go off for 2 touchdowns, maybe an 80-yarder, and get you 30-something points. Boyd's not going to do that.
Right.
So,
and then A.J. Green might get 12 targets. He might catch 8 of them, have 100 yards, but he's probably not going to score.
Right, not in the end zone.
Yeah. And what about you, Tone? I know you talked about you've looked into betting a little bit, or a little bit about it. What are you thinking about this week as far as the spreads or any games that are going on this week?
It's interesting how everything is lining up. Games are really tight. Games that players are going to win, teams are going to win. They're really tight. But, just like what happened last week, you have this player that just kind of comes out of nowhere and just scores a lot of points. So from a fantasy perspective, you just never know week to week what these guys are going to do. I'm waiting for Derrick Henry to have a bad game.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You can speculate, and the reality is, like, sometimes you've got the matchup. And a couple weeks ago when Sammy Watkins first went out, I started McCole Hardman feeling for sure that he was going to be a cheap cost and he was going to return some value, and he didn't. He had 1 reception. He did worse than when Watkins was on the field.
That's how it goes, though.
Yeah.
So just to get to some of the bets here, I'll go through these quick. If you guys have questions, I know none of you guys really place bets, but
we got opinions.
Hey, and also, if you got a problem, this is not a segment of the show to promote gambling, but it is just to give the info and just give people an idea, because it does relate to fantasy as far as the spreads and how much guys are going to score. And so we just want to correlate it with that and make sure we're keeping that as the overrunning theme of this, not to promote the gambling, but just to use it as the tool to help you
be responsible.
Be responsible with the money. All right. So
it's one to grow on, Phil.
As far as this week, I do got the Saints and the Bears. I do like the under, which is 43.5 points.
Bears are awful.
The Bears are not awful, but they're not great. But their defense,
we'll find out.
Their defense is holding opponents to 20 points per game. They're only scoring 19.
They're painful to
Okay,
watch.
the Saints are averaging 29 points on the road, and this is the first game the Saints are playing outdoors this year.
Yes.
They're going to be down Sanders, and Thomas is probable, but I don't know if he's going to be 100%.
He'll be. I think he's playing.
Yeah.
He's playing, but I don't think he'll be 100%.
He's not going to be 100%. And the big thing for me with the Saints, this is kind of a sandwich game for them. They had Carolina division game last week with Teddy Bridgewater, who was on their team last year, coming and facing them. I know that's it might seem like a trumped up thing, but there is a little bit of it makes the game a little bit more important, I think. And then next week they got Tampa Bay and they got Brady. So I don't think there's any way that they're not looking ahead a little bit towards that game.
Right.
So it kind of makes this kind of a mini trap game. And then I got the Bears, who are the better defense, and they're getting points, and they're at home. So
right. So you're not necessarily calling for them to win, but you believe they're going to cover the spread.
I think a safe bet is they're going to cover the spread, and I think they're going to win. But if I were putting money on it, I'd say, you want to stay safe, maybe hedge your bets and take the points.
Hey, take that with a grain of salt, everyone.
And I do think it's going to go under. Also, the Cowboys. Cowboys are getting 8.5 points. Okay, the Cowboys have looked terrible the last 2 weeks.
Andy Dalton's out.
He's out, but they've been embarrassed this week in the media.
They have.
They've had their ex-players, their alumni coming out against them. The heat is on. They've cut 2 of the players they signed in the offseason, 2 defensive players, Dontari Poe and Worley. They're going to lose this game probably, but I don't think they're going to lose by 9 points, especially to Philly, who for the season, they've got a minus 4.7 point differential. They're 2-4-1. They beat the Giants by 1 point last week. They shouldn't have won that game.
100.
But they hung with the Steelers week before that.
Okay.
To me,
they didn't hang with them. They were down, and the Steelers let them get back in the game.
But you got Ben.
That's exactly what we did, though.
Ben DiNucci from James Madison.
Oh, yeah.
It's a scary prop to me.
They're going to lose.
How do they move that ball?
I don't think they're going to lose by 10 points because I don't think Philly is running up and down the field.
I mean, did Philly get their guys back?
Their offensive linemen?
Yeah.
No, they have the Lane Johnson re-injured himself. and he's questionable. So right now they have officially one starting lineman, offensive lineman, and then the rest are questionable. I think 2 of them are out. One, Lane Johnson's questionable, and the other one is questionable.
Yeah, they're probably going to lose this game.
The Philadelphia Dallas rivalry is one that I'm intimate with.
For sure.
Yeah.
The Eagles are going to try to blow these guys out. They don't care.
I don't think they can though.
No, I'm on with Antone and Rocky right now.
feel
I
like-
think so.
yeah,
I think
And if
so.
we could
We're
make
talking about
a note
Philly,
of it.
right? We're talking about Philly,
We're talking
and
about
then
Philly.
and then what Dallas doesn't have. Is that what we're doing? We're talking
That's
about
what we're
Philly,
doing, yes.
and we're talking about the line, but that's the offensive line. The defense is pretty stern, man. They're pretty firm.
Who, Philadelphia?
Yeah, for sure. And we're talking about a Dallas team that doesn't have all their key components.
And they got to go to the link.
This is what I'll say.
Yeah, I mean,
like I said, that same team's been there all year. They're minus 4 points, about 5 points in point differential. They're 0-3 at home against the spread. You're
That's-
giving me 8.5 points. I'll take the Cowboys.
That's
We'll see
fair.
what happens next week.
but
That's
we
a-
are talking about a
that's a-
Cowboys team that's not a Cowboys team.
That's
These-
a lock right there.
These guys may get Halloween candy thrown at them as they come out on the field.
They might, but I also
Or
think they're
battery.
going
You're
to
talking
be.
about the
I think the guys that are
Dallas-
left on that
Dallas,
roster,
for
I think
sure.
the guys left on that roster have been embarrassed all week.
Okay.
And I think they're going to cut. I don't think they're going to win, but I think they'll play hard.
We'll
And I think
see.
they're
We
going to
will
keep
see.
it closer than 10 points.
Didn't the Eagles boo Santa Claus once?
They threw
threw
snowballs
at
them.
him.
Cheered Michael Irvin on the ground.
This will
It's
be
a tough
great.
environment.
Worst.
I mean, they're definitely top 3 worst fans. in the
Worst
league.
fans.
This will
for
be
sure.
passionate fans.
No,
They're passionate, but they're bad.
No. Passionate is the Raiders.
All right, and then my last 2, I'll make these quick. I got Titans over the Bengals, right?
I
And
agree
then
with
I
that.
got the over in that game, 53.5. I'm not crazy
sure.
about the Titans winning by 6 points. They're 2-4 against the spread this year. But I do like the over in this game.
Yeah.
Both teams score, and both teams have bad defenses.
Yep.
So I think it's a pretty
Shootout.
safe play. And then Cleveland and Vegas, I got the over in that game as well. It's at 51.5, and I think they both are terrible on defense, and I think they'll probably have a 30-33 game, something like that. I think you can play that pretty safely, and I probably would take Vegas on the road in that
Who's
game.
getting points?
Vegas is getting 2.5.
Yeah, I my gut set tells me Cleveland will lose.
Yeah, I think Cleveland will lose too this
I
game.
hate to say it, but that's what I believe.
Yeah, but you know what? My Mayfield, he's gonna come strong.
Ooh. Why? Because OBJ's not there?
All right.
But I keep my eye on the weather with that game.
Yeah.
You know, it might have a factor, it might not. Especially if it's a really bad game. Cleveland wants to run the ball, and they can run the ball, so that would tip things in their favor. But if it's not so bad, and Vegas could throw the ball around, it's going to force the Browns to throw the ball around, and I think that makes Mayfield turn the ball over once or twice.
Good chance.
Yeah.
All right, Delano, I think you're going to take us out, and I think we're done with our first official show of the Ultimate Fantasy Locker
Room. Thank you guys for joining us. Go ahead and if you want to find us on any social media, you can find us on Instagram, Ultimate Locker Room, Fantasy Locker Room, and anywhere else. Just make sure you guys stay tuned for our next episode. Thank you for joining us once again, and see you next time. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Good work, fellas.
Good work.
I start caring if they know who I am. I have no regrets about it. Yeah, I serve you, Lord, and that's about it. Try to give them life, I hope they understand. Hey, yeah. Hey, hey, yeah. Hey, hey. You know what I know, my arms open, heart's broken, fixing, filled with his empty and broke. Oh, know what I know, hearts open, arms open, when I stand up, I'm straight to my knees.
Yeah, it's like we holding on to what he's hating. Lacking luster from the father, cause there's no relation. I'm told to tell you about a word from God, it's not mistaken. That's why his name is always true.